Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining. We are here today to just kind of have a little briefing, so to speak, of the Abhinaya with Abhyas Somatics course that we have been doing. We are in between level 1 and level 2 at this point, and we have with us a few participants. Some are old timers, and some have just joined us. So it's a good mix of people, and they're all from different backgrounds. They all pursue different um, practices, artistic to the political. And so we are really here to see as to how this practice of Abhyas Somatics with Abhinaya, how it touches them and how it touches their work, their practice and their position in life. So without further ado, I think I'd like to invite, and let me just introduce. So we have Rauni with us, who has just joined us. He joined, I think, the practice 4 weeks ago, right, Rauni? So you are the freshman here. And then we have Natasha, who has been with me for a while. And Ashwini and Natasha as a political activist, and Ashwini, who's an artist and a Bharatanatyam dancer, has been with me for about 3 years now. And Simrat has been with me from the beginning of Abhyas Somatics since 2016. So, so we have a good mix here, and Simrat is also a visual artist. So without spending any other time on formalities, let me ask, and I'll begin with Brownie because he's new, and his experience of this practice is very fresh. Brownie, can you tell me what this practice has meant to you? How do you decipher or describe this practice?
Okay, so I'm going to do a little attempt, but it might be a bit crooked, but I'll try because I've only done 3 classes so far. So I mean, what I've so far really taken from Abhinaya
Somatics.
Somatics, yes, from your teachings is the relationship to interiority and the interiority of the body, and how to use movement as a way to extend the interiority outward. So yeah, so how does what is inside, or like what is the question of what is the insideness of oneself, and that insideness is something very slippery, and that it's also very messy, but in that messy slipperiness and that kind of a continuous attempt to touch the messy and the slipperiness of the somatic body, this dance comes to form. The body kind of gestures in that attempt to touch the slipperiness, that also it's a very sensual, delicious kind of slipperiness that is ungraspable as well. So for me, those terms of ungraspability and messiness that are really at the core of what I'm experiencing in these classes. So this attempt to touch that slipperiness, there is form that comes out of that. And that form is incredibly also open. It's not so directed towards what particular dance form or so I'm really taking it into also a very improvisational nature of bringing also the emotional relationship between form and imagination. So how do we I really love this word enlacing. So how can the body's movement be enlaced with both emotions and imagination? So yeah, and what is the constant kind of wavering dance that comes out of that attempt of bringing in emotion and the deep space of imagination melting into one another. Yeah, this is my bit of an unhandy attempt to describe what so far the somatic practice has done for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. That's very, very, very well put. And it just actually touches upon the practice. It kind of contains the practice very well. Actually, you've touched upon a few words, which is interiority, which is made up of experience. And then there is, for lack of a better word, you said dance or gesticulation or movement and imagination. And I really, I think one of the things that prompted me to create this practice was when really I mean, and it's so obvious, but it takes a while to realize that I use my body to accentuate what I say. My body, I use body to say or emphasize what words can't say enough. So my body kind of laces my words. I have to shrug my shoulders. I have to tense I have to squint. I have to do something with my eyes to accentuate what I'm, to reinforce the import of my words, because my words don't seem to be enough to express my experience of interiority. And on the other hand, I also realize that just as the words feel adequate to express externally, and I have to use movement or shape um, uh, externally, internally, I feel it's the other way around. My words don't feel enough and to even decode or explain or describe it to myself. So I have to go into imagination or the imagery. So where words stop, the imagery blossoms. So I don't know if I'm explaining this well. Just as words feel short um, or left wanting, and I have to use gesture or movement outside, internally, the same words also feel wanting, and I have to lace them with the imagery. So there's imagery, experience, interiority, and movement. I think this is the continuum that I think this practice is trying to traverse. So, and at the bit in the middle of it is interiority, which is just a bundle, a mess of experience. Past, present, imagined, fictitious, real, historic, prehistoric, karmic, whatever. So anyways, so that's where I am. Thank you. That was very well. So now let me just open up the next round. And Ridu, would you like to step in? And we have a couple of questions that maybe we can propose.
So the next question is, what are you receiving from? What promise do you intuit within this practice, particularly vis-a-vis your own practices and positions in life? So if anyone would like to take it, maybe Simrat actually, because I was thinking that after Rayoni, someone who has done this practice for so long would be, good choice.
Yeah, so what are you receiving from this practice? What have you received from this practice? And what promise you intuit, particularly vis-a-vis your own practices? So please explain and tell us a little bit about your own practice too, before you answer this question.
Okay. Thank you, Mridu. Thank you, Navtej. So I guess I'll begin just by saying that I have a little bit of difficulty describing my practice because I tend to I have many different practices that I kind of bring together, and I feel like Abhyas Somatics is one of the many practices. It's actually one of the most integral practices, I think. For me, writing is currently like a prominent part of my everyday life and my practice, but also drawing and painting and other like image-based work. As far as movement is
Sorry, Simrat, your audio is breaking.
Can you hear? I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I'm drawn to this practice because of several of the, I think some of the things have been mentioned already, but there's a kind of like traversing authority that happens in the Abhyas Somatic practice that I find to be, this is a word that someone who's also does this practice, Gurshab uses, which is, it's a generative practice, in that it sort of, things emerge out of the movement that we find ourselves doing. It's a revelatory practice. I think a lot of things appear and arrive. I arrive into a place where things emerge. It's not a practice where I'm searching for something necessarily, or a practice that I'm entering with a goal or like a place to arrive at. But nonetheless, once I'm in it, I do find myself in this sort of realm or this space where things start emerging. And I think they do emerge from the interior, but at the same time, I think that they emerge in relationship to something that's outside of myself, which is a little bit difficult to describe. Sometimes it's a thing, and it could be imagined or real. It could be an object in the space. It could be like a point just around me. It could be something that's happening within myself that sort of comes outside me in that moment. But one of the things I think that's really interesting about this practice is I can be inside and outside at the same time, equally. And that's a very interesting place to be, because I find we don't have that experience very often. As far as how it helps my practice, I think that it's been really interesting for writing, especially like poetry and poetic writing. I often find things come to me in terms of images and words imbued together. And they're not, it's hard to describe this, but the images that appear or the words that appear, they're quite full. They're full of something. I don't want to use this word, but maybe affect is some kind of word, or like there's a fullness to the words and images that sort of imbue it with a little bit more meaning than like an image that I would have, maybe that may have come to me if I were just sitting and writing on my desk. But because these words and these images seem to be emerging out of my body or emerging out of my experience, there's many layers, and there's a fullness to them that I don't find I get from outside of the somatic practice. So I think it helps me get in touch with something inside myself that's beyond words, as was mentioned, something that's not graspable, and yet at the same time is very concrete and material and experienced by myself. And when I have that reference, and when I have that feeling, and when I've experienced something, there is a way, if not through word, not through image, if not through movement, for me to transmit that or articulate that in whatever way to another. So yeah, so that's roughly, I don't know if that was too vague, but that's roughly what I find that the promise of this practice is, that there's a fullness that I experience while I do this practice, that is perhaps a fullness that exists inside of myself that I can't experience in my daily life outside. And by virtue of experiencing it in the practice, it spills over and imbues things outside of the practice. This fullness exists, then it spills over.
Navtej, you're mute. You're mute.
Yeah, no, I said beautiful. Thank you very much, Simran. Very well put. Shall we go to the next person and then maybe have a conversation at the end if we have time?
Ashwini, would you like to share your experience?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, I think the first thing that comes is having gone through a classical training with the word Abhinaya. I had always struggled with some aspects of the stylization involved in expression. But when I have practiced this with Navtej, it not only stylization became like natural and kind of an offshoot of something that is just there. It almost like it's been an unlearning and kind of a recognition. Navtej uses this word, but it's truly been a recognition of something that already is inside of me. And this particular thing that is ever creative, because I'm also I'm also an artist. I'm also a kind of, I love to also write and poems, and the kind of expression that has been coming out of, spilling over from the practice, is just something that no other formal training opened up for me. And one simple thing I'd like to just jump very randomly, because it's a live situation, and where does it, I'm going to get into straight into like where the practice, how it spills over. It became, in the teaching of Navtej, there is this beautiful thing that we dwelled on, which was Preeti, which Navtej calls about like a sweet marble or a loveliness. And that aspect of Preeti has kind of informed me somatically, to where an idea of writing love letters to my aging parents, because they stay in another hometown, and I didn't know how to fill up the space to be there for them, because I couldn't. But as I have gone through this Abhinaya Somatics practice, and of course with other practices that Navtej teaches, but yes, Abhinaya has been a big part of this, because here I have been able to, I have somehow stumbled upon through this the sensory aspect of my being, which has always been very difficult to deal with. I found a river to channel it, and it became love letters to my parents through art and through my own mother tongue. This is a big piece, because Navtej is Hindi and Urdu, which influence, and Punjabi that weaves in through these classes, apart from wonderful English, is this my own mother tongue kind of came, and these letters, because my parents all are Marathi speaking people, so English is very strange for them. Even if I'm a poet, I can't express and reach my transparency to them in English. And I actually found myself capable of writing love letters in my own mother tongue, and really having words from my own mother tongue that were coming from a space that I touched through these somatic experiences and this deep immersion with Abhinaya. And that Abhinaya has become my deepest expression to my parents, and has brought about absolute healing and transformation, and just such a like a resonance of finding home. And that's what I'll wrap it up in, if that makes sense. So.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Natasha?
Yeah. So a lot of my work is actually collective work, right? So I organize, and I'm also somebody who is a media artist, so I also work with images. So that's also something of interest for me in relation to this practice. But I think begin with, like, I think one of the most important things for me in my life is to think about how do infrastructure of power and control affect us collectively, and then specifically on our bodies. And they could be, you know, any different kinds. You can think about colonization or nation states, or like any form of supremacy that we live in the day to day, and like how that impacts us collectively. And then also, I think with the practice with Navtej, understanding how that actually affects our body in these different ways. So I think for me, the practice has been one in which, you know, my search for this idea of freedom, of liberation, what does that mean for us? And so, like, the way I think about it is, like, I feel like it gives you the taste, you know, it gives you the experience, like how you ek bari chakh lete ho, like you taste this kind of seconds or minutes of this, you know, what could liberation or freedom be? And then you want to have those experiences collectively, and you want to share, and you want to undo so much of what has happened to you, right? And so for me, like, I'm not a performance artist, so for me, Abhinaya, like, even though I've done it way before also, like I think I did it in 2019 or 20, the first time as well. And even I remember from that time, the thing that really hit me was the autonomy of my body, right? Because I'm very much interested in what do autonomous structures mean. And I feel like, especially after doing the practice with Navtej, it has to start from our bodies before we even go collectively. And this is some of the biggest failures that I see in social movements, which is that often we talk about collectivity and ideological ideas of what freedom means, but the interior work is not there. And so for me, like, this is the potential, right? If we all collectively think about what is happening inside us, how our bodies are autonomous, how do all of these different things kind of condition us, and how we can also think about freedom, right? And in that, I think the biggest thing for me has always been desire, and like the potential of desire. Like, so for example, like in the practice, like especially like right now with, so much death around us, like it completely kills any form of desire in life, right? Any form of desire in terms of what is the meaning of living. And for me, when I'm in the practice, like I think the way you said it, Simrit, also happens, which is that your body feels the outside also. There isn't a boundary between the I and the world, and the universe dissolves in this way where you feel both connected to it and also very like small in some ways, like if that's the best word, right? It also like kind of brings you out of your own this kind of dialectic between the mind and the body, which is actually like the binary in some ways doesn't exist. So, for example, like I think like with some of the times when we do a very basic practice of just raising our hands, like I quite frankly very much enjoy how my wrist is very autonomous and wants to be on its own in the space. And that experience of knowing that your body is not in your control, I feel like is also a very kind of liberatory experience, which I think can really change a lot of things. Um, the other thing that I wanted to mention was, yeah, the like I think like especially I've also been doing other, like before I joined Navtej, I was doing a lot of Buddhist practice before, and like a lot of them were very like a lot of them were very much in this idea of like the body must be still, there must be this complete attention on breath, right? So breath for me is a starting point, and I think you said it once, breath is consciousness also in one of the courses, I can't remember. But this idea of the breath being also another tool, but often like I've experienced that only with sitting, right, where you can free feel something. And I think this is a new experience that I've started having, which is how do you actually continue that with movement, right? How can you be in that space with movement? And once you are there with the movement, then how do you open your eyes and continue that experience, which you might have experienced for a second or a minute, but how do you continue that then in your life, right? So for me, Abhinaya necessarily isn't about performance in that way, but like we're always performing, and performativity is a huge part of our existence. So how does that method actually become liberatory also? And I feel like the breath is truly connected, and so is the body and the autonomy of it. So yeah, a lot of things. I mean, I could say more, but I think that's enough.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. That was very well said. Thank you. So I guess it's now Ravni. Would you like to say something about the promise and how it relates to your work?
Wow, it's so many beautiful things all of you shared. So I've been for the past 7 years busy with the sound of grief through mourning, through moaning as a mourning practice. And I've been working with this spectrum of moaning. So from the grieving sound to like really the sensual, sexual, liberatory sounds of the body. I use moaning also as a way to, really gear towards liberatory movements within, but also with each other as a collective practice as well. So I hold these moaning sessions where we together are in this wailing song together. So we do call and responses where we listen, lean in to one person wailing, and then we respond with the whole group with this improvisatory wailing. So I feel that with Abhinaya is that this kind of sense of interiority without the individual. So when I work with wailing and moaning, it's not about what is the grief per se inside of you, but how can your body be an expression of grief that is just an inside and an outside. So what are we inheriting from, what is inherited grief? What is the sound of grief that just passes by the wind and that kind of like sits in your bones and then kind of fills you up? And I think this term of interiority has been really like, yes, sitting with me, that what is the sound of interiority? I'm like really busy with in relation to moaning, maybe like, how does interiority sound? And then I'm really getting a bit nerdy with how can I do this Abhinaya somatic practice, but less through maybe movement, but rather through sounding. Like specifically because I think, I mean, I really feel you, Natasha, what you say about the sense of the autonomy of the body. So refusing that we have control over the body. So then therefore also refusing that we have control over our voices. So how can our voices, when we start liberating our voice through this sensation of touching the interiority and being in a constant attempt to be in touch with the interiority, and that interiority being this kind of like mass, undefined mass that you don't know what it is. It just kind of moves in and out from above, underneath, from the past, from the future. And then how can the body be a very strong carrier of that? So also building up actually this using this practice as a way also to build up muscle, like muscle strength. Like in a way, I see also Abhinaya, like this constant return to lifting the arm. I'm really training the muscle of specifically my right arm of how to lift it with autonomy. And so there's this sense of like the muscle training and what, yeah, I think I'm really invested in the emotion and the emotional aspect of this because I'm so busy with the emotional landscape of the body, but not the body as an individual, the body a constant collective, like a interplay between collective and singular. So yeah, kind of moving between strengthening the body's ability to sound with a lot of deep roars, and how can even the smallest whisper can have a strength that it can move mountains, basically. So it's a lot about how to I don't know, I think the sense of liberation and what you're mentioning, Natasha, but also what I'm hearing from the love letters to my parents. I mean, also touching, sorry, I'm like braiding everyone's things together, but I think yeah, the deep touch and this constant attempt to touch the interior, that is a very mystical place. I think for me, mysticism is also really important in this practice. That is something we're not trying to grasp it, we're not trying to understand it, but we're kind of constantly just trying to dance with it, or in my attempt then sound with it. So yeah, I get also really emotional often as I'm doing this practice. Like I had many moments that I'm just crying, because I think there's been moments that for the first time I kind of really felt the sensation of tenderness that I feel when I'm moaning, but sound is so different from movement also. So there's this kind of like this practice that I had that kind of really feels like a sister practice, or at least it's trying to really communicate as a sister practice to Abhinaya. And that to me feels really, it's thickening some sensations inside of myself that is really beautiful to experience and continue to experience. So yeah, thank you.
Navtej,
Wow. Yeah,
can I
sure,
add
sure.
to him?
Yeah.
So Ravni, I mean, so this is, this is the kind of this, I happen to have the love letter book because I was writing, and then every day I will sit by a lily pond and I will draw. So this is my mother, father, and then I will write a letter that just began to happen, and then it's in my mother tongue, you see. And what happened is, like, in the whole process of this, For me, it's been like the things that I sit in by these flowers, these still flowers in the practice, and just open and just kind of almost like I touch the dews on the lotus leaves and put it on my eyes and then say, let my sight open. And then I will just be meditatively like in this purposelessness, which is the somatics practice, where you just, it's like if you are lifting that arm in the somatic practice of Abhinaya, it would be lifting my pen and wherever it touches, right? And it'll just start. It will just start something that is just happening automatically. And at the end of it, when the drawing is complete and I just know that it's finished, then this beautiful practice of, where you had to unit by unit stop to know where the next movement starts. This has been the practice of Abhinaya. And then I will pause and this kind of allowing in the space of not knowing what is going to be the memory or what is it that the love letter that's going to be for my parents. And when the pen would start, and at the end of it, it allowed me to ride this absolute sensual tenderness with words that are not mine. It's like like a mendicant, like there is a certain dervishness to this, where it's like three things that because you were talking about it's that there is some mysticism to this, like to spacing out and to stargaze, there is also the heart of the poet, that kind of just happens to pop out, and love just pours, and the resonance of it, why it's been healing for me is I'm so happy that I found a way to say I love you to my parents, because in our culture, you don't say I love you. We don't have it in our culture to express I love you in words. You kind of say to their body, your eyes, and my parents and me are not even like touchy and huggable people. But in this, the depth of whatever transmits, all of you, has been the power of somatics and Abhinaya, the way Navtej teaches it. Because it reached them, and the resonance of it is the satisfaction of, thank God I found this portal to know how to express my interiority. And this thing that our Simrat brought, that the exterior and the interior somewhere meet, but it's transparent. And I suddenly discovered, yes, if it's transparent for me, it's transparent for everybody, and it's unique. It has a specificity that is a key. Therefore, any scientist, engineer, poet, architect, I mean, it's not just a dancer. Anybody who's sensitive and can be touched with sensorial experience, this is a most brilliant tool to discover there is no originality, they say, but it is very original, and I found this very intimate thing to speak to my parents, and I don't know if you all know what a gift it is before they're not in the physical form, to be able to find a way to, to just have that little link without physically being there in the normal sense. See, it's very abnormal, because who would have known a letter would give me and them so much joy. And like my mother right now is bedridden, and when I entered and I have come home to my hometown, she was full of smiles because she can't talk, but I can see every letter that I sent even an audio recording to her because she can't read. It has lit her from the inside, because she knows that I know, and she knows that I'm fine, that she can not be worried for me, so that's the power of this practice.
Wow, thank you all. This has been very rich. It's been very compact. It's been pretty dense, actually, but very rich. And we've covered so many things, and they're all, of course, related. But if I just kind of, if I just try to sum it up for myself, not even for all of you, or not even kind of summarize, because that's not the point. It is like, for me, this practice, I mean, the attempt, the aim is to to like when we talk of Sankhya, Sankhya is the philosophy that this is all based upon, Rauni, which deals with consciousness and matter. And consciousness does not have agency, and matter does not have consciousness. But for me, this is a practice in which somehow that's an attempt. Maybe it's a delusion, but and if it's a delusion, it's a very pleasurable delusion, and it's a very revelatory delusion, and it's a very healing delusion, and it's a delusion that offers me repose, resolve, clarity, and liberation. And the attempt is to somehow lend consciousness agency by grafting my movements to rid my movements of norm, function, morality, and somehow let the appetite of my consciousness or my interiority just lead my voice, lead my movement, lead my shapes, lead my pen, to make, to graft, to make a world of its own, an imaginary world of its own. And so when Simrat is saying, that the interior and the external kind of fuse or become one, this is exactly like the internal is spilling unself-consciously, unhindered outside. It's like, love letters to a parent, and we know how tender we are with parents and how stiff we are with parents. Those relationships get so stiff, and we can't just say we love you when we are dying to, and we live with it all our lives, before and after they're gone. So it's getting like unstoppered somewhere. All of you have said such wonderful things. I can't even like recount. Natasha, about this discrepancy between, talking of liberation and fighting for liberation, but without giving the body a chance. This is such a typical, it is so typical to be not autonomous in ourselves and be talking of liberation. And we are not autonomous because we are trying to control. We are trying to control our bodies. Whereas we know that what we are discovering through this practice is that autonomy is not even freedom. Autonomy is by knowing that my body is autonomous. I have no control over my body or my voice, for that matter. Yes, and Rauni, you said a few such beautiful things. I even forget this thing about voice. I'm sorry, I'm actually forgetting now. I'm getting muddled. But and I know that we are on the same page, and we are on the same page because we are all passionate beings, and we are all distraught beings at the same time. And the body is my site, my reservoir, my repertoire, my agent, my medium, my memory, everything, my past, my present, my future, my inside, my outside, all of it traverses through my body. So what is the word I want to end with? I might not be able to bring it up. It's to just kind of to settle in the body and allow it. I think it's allowing, like really allowing the body to trust the body. I mean, it's what I just want to end with this by, it is one thing that Ashwini has been able to write these letters, but then and the other thing that Ashwini has had the courage and the naivety and the innocence and the love to send this to her parents, knowing that the parents will receive, and for the parents to receive. So Ashwini is not doing this practice alone now. She has implicated her parents in the practice too. They too have become, so to speak, practitioners. And this practice is about dropping guard. Ashwini has dropped guard, and somehow whoever gets touched by it also perforce drops guard. So I think this practice is about dropping guard. Dropping guard and, of course, dropping control for the sake of freedom, autonomy, liberation. So thank you very much. Is there anything we have? Let me see. How much time do we have? We have about 6 minutes. If somebody wants to add, Ridu, if you want to add something, you can, because you've been with us. You know the practice from the outside or the inside, both.
Yeah, I think I find myself deeply, deeply attracted to this practice. And I have, for people who don't know, that I have attempted to do somatics and also BAPS with Navtej, but I think I'm someone who's deeply guarded. I cannot let go. I'm still not able to do it after being and working with Navtej. And, like we think about these practice, we try and write the notes together. But again, when it comes to dropping guard, I think I'm not ready yet. It makes me very uncomfortable. It to the point that, like this was when I started doing somatics, my body just felt very uncomfortable. And when I hear you guys, it really attracts me towards this practice. But then, as Navtej ended, it's about dropping guard. And I don't think I am still at that place where I have dropped my guard yet. So many, how do I say? So I understand how this practice affects people and their practice, because I hear and I read the responses. But then, and I think for myself that what if I do it? How is it going to affect me? I think about it a lot. But then I also know that to do this practice, one just has to be, I have to make myself available, which I think I'm not ready. But I hope that I'm able to at some point. And whatever you all said, it's just very beautiful. I understand I think one word that keeps coming back to me when I have to explain to people what Abhyas Somatics is, because I get a lot of questions. And I have said this to people that, it's a healing practice. It's also mystical practice. When Rayani mentioned that word, it just hit me, because how do I explain this to people? And especially because I've not done it. I think about it, I see it, I write about it, but I have not done it myself. So I keep telling people it's very healing. There is no structured movement, but it's very healing, but it's also very mystical. So I think I could relate to what you all said, and it's very beautiful. And I thank you all for sharing.
Yeah, can I add one thing
No,
to
just
that?
1 second. I think just one thing, Mridu, suddenly struck me that I think one of the reasons that you have been hesitant to do this is because you're also managing this. You're the manager of this practice. So you cannot drop guard. It suddenly hit me, that you can't, you're looking at it very differently. So you're neither inside nor outside. You are somewhere stuck in the middle. So yeah, so that would be the reason. Natasha?
Yeah, I just very quickly, like, I think, I think one of the other things is that, and I've also realized it with other people who are wanting to do practice, that availability, of course, is the prime thing, but also being available, like while you're available and you're in the practice, it can still be very difficult to even say that you're available and being in it. Like I think even though, like, for example, like I think I did the first course with Navtej was Indian Poetics in 2019. And it has been like 5 years, and I still think that there's a part of me which is not available, and that part of me which is not available, in fact, is not even available to me. And I think the biggest betrayal is on me, because and that's the part, I think, the word that was used was thickening of the muscles in some ways. And because I feel like the process is never like, this is one of the things, right? Like the process of liberation or freedom, there isn't a blueprint for it, there isn't an end goal, there isn't going to be a day when I'm going to be like, I'm free, like, so I feel like it's a process of undoing. So I just kind of feel like, what you said, Navtej, before, like, the agency, I feel like the agency is in the wandering, right? You give agency to wandering within yourself, and in that you find that maybe someday you will become available to yourself also. Like, because I think the biggest betrayal that is happening inside of me is to me in some ways, as what my relation is to this world. And it is not an individual relation. I'm not talking about me in the egoistical like kind of I, but like this body consciousness, whatever is present with its interrelations in the world. So I totally understand. And I think the part about managerial part, I think the biggest problem that I've also seen, like sometimes that happens, is when people think of it as a practice that's going to help them professionally in some ways. Like I think that's the moment we professionalize the practice also, I think it loses its charm a little bit. So in some ways, I think you say it a lot, Navtej, which is the purposelessness, the purposelessness of just picking up your arm or like, coming to the mat or being in practice. Like that purposelessness is in a way also about availability of like shedding all of this, load of productivity that we have. Like, and that could be not just like a professional managerial productivity. I think especially for women, we have a lot of that, like, in terms of who do we take care of, what do we do, like, auto responses, like the level is very deep. So yeah, just
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. I think we have to close at 6 o'clock, but I just want to end with, agency in wandering and the purposelessness. These two words are very, very important. Ashwini, sorry, I can't take your question right now or your response right now, but I think this has been really rich. And thank you very much for, joining us at such short notice, and hope to see you. We start level 2 in a week's time. And this is a continuing journey, as we know. And it's pleasurable for me, and I know it's for you. And thank you. It's such a gift to have all of you. Thank you. I just want to say that.